The old manor sat atop a hill, looming over the surrounding countryside. Its once grand halls and beautiful gardens had long since fallen into disrepair, the ivy creeping up the walls and the windows boarded up. The only thing that remained was the eerie silence that seemed to envelop the entire estate. But one day, a group of brave adventurers decided to explore the abandoned manor. Eager to uncover its secrets, they made their way through the overgrown gardens and up the winding path to the front door. As they pushed it open, the sound of creaking wood echoed through the halls. At first, they were filled with a sense of excitement as they explored the grand foyer, admiring the intricate carvings on the walls and the faded tapestries hanging from the ceiling. But as they ventured deeper into the manor, they began to feel uneasy. The air grew colder, and they could hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the halls. At first, they thought it was just their imagination playing tricks on them, but soon they realized that they were not alone in the manor. Everywhere they turned, they heard the ghostly whispers and felt a presence lurking in the shadows. The brave few continued to explore the manor, their curiosity and sense of adventure overcoming their fear. But as they climbed the winding staircase to the upper floors, they were suddenly overcome by a sense of dread. The air grew thick with the scent of decay, and the sound of a ghostly voice echoed through the halls. It was then that they realized the truth. The manor was cursed. An ancient spirit had been trapped within its walls for centuries, and it was determined to make its presence known. The brave few had no choice but to flee the manor, running down the winding staircase and out the front door. As they stood outside, catching their breath and looking back at the looming structure, they knew that they would never return. The curse of Blackwood Manor would remain forever, a reminder of the terror that lurks in the darkness. The brave few left the cursed manor behind, but the memory of what they had experienced stayed with them. They couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even in the safety of their own homes. The ghostly laughter and footsteps echoed in their minds, haunting their dreams. As the weeks passed, strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own, doors opened and closed by themselves, and a cold breeze seemed to follow them wherever they went. They knew that the curse of Blackwood Manor had followed them out into the world. The brave few tried to ignore the strange occurrences, but they could not escape the feeling that they were being followed. They knew that they needed to do something to lift the curse, to break the hold that the ancient spirit had on them. They returned to the manor, armed with holy water, sage, and a determination to banish the curse once and for all. They made their way through the dark halls, their hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. They sprinkled holy water in every room, burned sage to cleanse the air, and recited prayers to ward off evil spirits. As they made their way to the upper floors, they heard the sound of ghostly laughter growing louder and more intense. They could feel the presence of the ancient spirit lurking just out of sight, watching them with malevolent eyes. But the brave few did not back down. They continued to recite their prayers, burning sage and sprinkling holy water in every room. And slowly, the laughter began to fade, the cold breeze began to dissipate, and the presence lurking in the shadows began to recede. Finally, the brave few emerged from the manor, exhausted but triumphant. They knew that the curse of Blackwood Manor had been lifted, and they had banished the ancient spirit that had haunted them for so long. They looked back at the manor, now silent and empty once again, and knew that it would remain a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, but now, without its hold over them. The brave few had thought that banishing the ancient spirit from Blackwood Manor would lift the curse and end their torment. But they were wrong. The phantom voices continued to haunt them, whispering in their ears even when they were far from the manor. They knew that they had to do something more to break the hold that the curse had on them. They consulted with experts in the supernatural and researched ancient texts, looking for a way to banish the phantom voices once and for all. Their search led them to a powerful ritual that was said to be able to banish even the most stubborn spirits. It was a dangerous ritual, involving the sacrifice of a rare animal and the chanting of ancient incantations. But the brave few were willing to do whatever it took to end their torment. They gathered the necessary materials and returned to Blackwood Manor. They made their way to the darkest room in the manor, where the phantom voices seemed to be the loudest. They lit candles and prepared the ritual, chanting the incantations and sacrificing the rare animal. As they chanted, the room began to fill with a thick fog, and the sound of the phantom voices grew louder and more intense. But the brave few did not falter. They continued to chant, their voices growing louder and more powerful. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light, and the room was filled with a deafening roar. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the ritual was over. The fog dissipated, the sound of the phantom voices faded away, and the brave few were left standing in silence. They knew that the ritual had worked. The curse of Blackwood Manor had been lifted, and the phantom voices were gone. They looked around the room, now bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, and knew that they had banished the darkness that had haunted them for so long. As they left the manor, they knew that they would never forget the terror that they had faced, but they also knew that they had overcome it. Blackwood Manor would remain forever a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, but now, without its hold over them, they could face that darkness with a newfound strength and courage. The brave few had thought that banishing the ancient spirit and the phantom voices would end their torment at Blackwood Manor, but as they left the manor, they could still feel a presence following them. It was as if the shadow that had lurked in the darkness had taken on a life of its own, following them out into the daylight. At first, the brave few tried to ignore the feeling, thinking that it was just their imagination playing tricks on them. But as they went about their daily lives, they continued to feel the presence lurking just out of sight. They tried to forget about the manor and move on with their lives, but the shadow in the dark seemed to haunt them wherever they went. It was as if the curse of Blackwood Manor had followed them, refusing to let go. The brave few knew that they had to do something to rid themselves of the shadow that haunted them. They consulted with experts once again, hoping to find a way to break the hold that the curse had on them. Their search led them to a powerful talisman that was said to have the ability to banish evil spirits and curses. It was a small, ancient amulet made of silver and inscribed with protective symbols. The brave few obtained the talisman and carried it with them wherever they went. They soon noticed that the presence of the shadow seemed to be fading, as if the talisman was providing them with protection. As time passed, the brave few began to feel more at ease. They could finally move on with their lives without the constant feeling of being watched by the shadow in the dark. But they knew that they could never forget the terror that they had faced at Blackwood Manor. The shadow in the dark would always be a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows, and they would always carry the talisman with them as a symbol of their victory over the curse. As they made their way outside, the brave few could not shake the feeling that they were being followed. They turned around, but there was nothing there. The wind howled through the empty halls of the manor, and the trees surrounding the estate rustled ominously. The brave few huddled together, trying to find some solace in their shared terror. One of them spoke up, and quote, "We have to tell someone about this. We can't let people wander into that death trap." And quote. The others nodded in agreement. Realizing that they had a duty to warn others about the curse and haunting of Blackwood Manor, they made their way to the nearby town and sought out the local authorities, telling them of the horrors they had experienced in the old manor. But to their dismay, the authorities dismissed their claims, thinking them to be just the wild imaginings of a group of youngsters. The brave few were disheartened, but they were not deterred. They knew that they had to warn people about the dangers of Blackwood Manor, even if it meant taking matters into their own hands. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The brave few had become obsessed with the manor and the secrets it held. They returned to the estate, armed with cameras, audio recorders, and other equipment to capture any evidence of the curse and haunting. Their persistence paid off, as they were able to capture strange noises, unexplained movements, and ghostly apparitions on their equipment. They compiled all of their findings and presented them to the local authorities once again, this time with hard evidence to back up their claims. The authorities were forced to take notice and finally took action, closing off the manor to the public and conducting a full investigation. The brave few had succeeded in their mission to warn others about the dangers of Blackwood Manor. But even as the manor remained closed and abandoned, the brave few knew that the curse and haunting of Blackwood Manor would continue to live on, forever haunting their memories and reminding them of the darkness that lurks in the shadows. Years passed, and the abandoned Blackwood Manor stood as a dark and ominous presence in the countryside. Its halls were empty, its walls decaying, and its windows shattered. The villagers spoke of the curse that haunted the manor and warned their children to stay away. One day, a group of curious teenagers decided to explore the manor. They laughed and joked as they approached the decaying entrance and pushed open the creaky door. As they stepped inside, they felt a chill in the air and heard the sound of phantom footsteps. The teenagers explored the manor, climbing up the stairs to the upper levels, peeking into rooms filled with broken furniture and dust. But as they made their way through the manor, they began to feel an eerie presence lurking in the shadows. They heard the sound of ghostly whispers and felt a presence watching them. The teenagers tried to shake off their fear and continued exploring, but the feeling of terror only grew stronger. Suddenly, a door slammed shut, and they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the upper floor. The teenagers frantically ran towards the exit, but they found the door had been mysteriously sealed shut. They were trapped, alone in the haunted Blackwood Manor. As they huddled together in fear, they heard the sound of phantom footsteps growing closer and closer. They felt the presence of the curse and knew that they would never leave the manor alive. The legacy of fear of Blackwood Manor lived on, warning anyone foolish enough to enter its halls that the curse still lurked within. The abandoned manor remained a dark and ominous presence, reminding all that the darkness still held secrets yet to be uncovered.